We got to the end of the pipeline, but we really didn't find a villain. What we found was a clearing in the forest about the size of a football field and a discarded can of drill bit lubricant.
Caught his skin burns, eye irritation.
Amazing drill aid, select flux, selective.
That feels like Gatorade, right?
Flow coolant.
I thought it was beer for the drillers.
Well, actually.
The only real villain we found that day was our gas tank. It was empty, and we needed a fill up to get back to Quito.
Don't you know that stuff kills the rainforest?
What?
Don't you know that stuff kills the rainforest?
Your car.
When we got back to Quito, Doug and the others were busy preparing for the arrival of the Trekkie saw. The saw came in on Saturday, but they couldn't get the saw out because the customs office was closed until Monday. With the Trekkie saw came one of the very few people who knew how to operate it, Clive Stewart, an engineer from England.
I'm just here to demonstrate the equipment at San Lorenzo, just to assemble the equipment and hopefully train a few people in how to operate it.
Here you go, guys.
Well,
I'll come back.
good luck.
Yeah.
On Monday morning, a lawyer was supposed to come by the house to take Doug to the bank, but the lawyer never showed. So Doug headed off to get the permiso letter by himself.
This is a matter of like breaking through the bureaucracy to see if we can get to the right guy.
Well, no, I know I've got his name here and all the letters and everything ready to go.
And all we really need is what?
Well, I need the permission to get the saw.
I followed Doug into the bank, but a lady told me I couldn't film there. So I waited outside. While I was distracted, Doug came out of the bank and went home with some bad news.
All right, why don't you explain to me what happened, because I don't quite get it all.
Oh, that's right, quite get it all right, to be honest.
Well, I got it all.
All right, we just got a bit of bum advice from a lawyer.
Well, he should have known about the permiso, right?
Yeah.
So basically
We should have had the permiso to import before it actually got arrived at the airport. And nobody told us about this. So, I mean, for 6 months we've been saying, is it all right to import? Can we bring it in? And I said, yeah, no problem, bring it in. And right up to the last minute, we were asking them to send us permission to import, please. Never anything came through. And they kept saying, no, it's all right, bring it in. So we did. And now it turns out that you're not allowed to bring it in. And there's a $10,000 fine for breaking that law.
Nobody knew what to do, but everybody had an idea.
Do we want anyone else to control this thing? I don't. You see how good they are at getting things done? Zilch.
Sí, bueno, pero él tiene que buscar su método. Yo sé que entre los ministros existen mecanismos para hacer juegos también feos.
You need a business partner of Ecuadorian origin to argue these cases for you.
Yeah.
After they all calmed down, it was Lucinda who put things back into perspective.
But have you got any choice?
Okay.
Can you think of any option other than paying $10,000?
We just went through the options. There's several options. There's one that we just abandon Ecuador and just pull out and go home on the next flight from Clive and all. Send the saw back and send it to some country that really wants it, Papua New Guinea, Ghana or whatever, we're clamouring for these things. In which case, all the work I put in here goes down the drain. All the work Douglas has put in the last 4 years goes down the drain. There's about 6 people here who've been working.
We've been working on this project.
He can't go back to that project. He can't go back to El Pan, Arenales, anywhere and show his face.
Yeah.
The RIC's finished.
Well, then it's not really a choice, is it?
Or we go for this appeal route.
How long will they appeal?
How long do appeals take in England? Years.
That's when we started wondering who, if anyone, would not want these people to have their Treca saw. Our Ecuadorian contacts suggested we check out a company called Endesa. Endesa was the largest timber company in Ecuador. Their main factory was located 9 kilometers south of Quito on the Pan American Highway. Once they got the log in the door, it was only a matter of minutes until it was turned into high-grade plywood ready for export. According to Dr. Silva de Postel of the Nature Foundation, Endesa and a handful of other timber companies had logged over 92% of the native rainforest in the western half of Ecuador. Now the timber companies were beginning to look to the east for new sources of wood, the same place that Doug and Chris wanted to take their saw. So we put the question directly to Nelson, the plant manager. Where was Endesa going to get their wood after they cut all the western forests down?
Endesa has promoted to another foundation, which is Corporación Juan Manuel Durini, and which is in charge of all the silviculture of all our companies. This has the purpose of...
What Nelson was trying to say was that Endesa knew all about the impending wood shortage, but had no plans to get trees from the east. In fact, he told us that they were already growing their own trees on plantations. We were skeptical, so he took us out back behind the factory to meet Fernando Montenegro. It turned out that Fernando headed up a non-governmental organization called Corporación Forestal. Established 12 years ago, it was dedicated to reforestation research and funded by contributions mainly from Endesa's owner, Juan Manuel Durini. Fernando had gathered seeds from all over the world in hopes of finding out which species would grow best. Fernando boasted that Endesa's factories would be processing only plantation-grown trees within the next 7 to 10 years. He also mentioned that he was going out to the plantation the following week and invited us to tag along. Back at Doug's house, things didn't seem to be improving on the Trecasaw front.
I've been to the bank now 3 times, you know. We have no power. We went to their meeting with the ambassador. We didn't even get, we just sat down there like good children downstairs. We didn't even meet the ambassador. They did the whole thing. It's ridiculous that we run around anymore. It's like we're being carted out on show. Everyone knows we're here. Everyone knows we exist. They know Clive's here, Marta's here. You know, they even know that they're running around, that every step of the way there's a camera on them.
They had decided to appeal the $10,000 fine, but that led nowhere. For days, they just went from one government office to the next, looking for help. But everything they did just seemed to make matters worse.
So what happened? Now we just begin the paperwork.
Okay, my immediate reaction is to say, sod Ecuador, I'm pissing off out here with my computer and making stew in their own stupid bureaucratic Jews.
Now you're assuming you're going to get it in under a reforestation piece of equipment. Now, you may well fall foul of that and find yourself having to pay 50% import duty on the machine.
Because they don't class it as
a reforestation piece of equipment.
Well, then we can't do it. So we just haven't
But that's something to check first.
We asked our driver Fausto what he thought. He laughed and suggested we meet his brother-in-law, Napoleon. It turned out that Napoleon was a big shot down at the customs office. He pulled some strings and got us into the storage area.
It's going to deteriorate if it's in here for a few months.
But even with his help, it took a half hour to locate the saw.
This is it? Which one? Here?
Afterward, we told Napoleon about the problem with the permissa letter, but he didn't seem too surprised. He told us about some Scandinavian recycling machinery that had been sitting in customs since 1985. We didn't think the rainforest could wait 5 years for the Trekkie saw and asked if he had any suggestions. Napoleon said he had great sympathy with our concern for the environment. He said he had a feeling that if we showed up between noon and 2 with a truck and $2,000, we shouldn't have any problems. On the way home, we asked Fausto, why between 12 and 2? He said, well, what time does your boss go to lunch?
Aquí tenemos un proceso que necesita algún tiempo para competir.
Fíjate que si los policías aquí saben qué cosa es de Ecuador y qué cosa es extranjera. Sí. Eso sí, es lo primero que ellos aprenden. Cualquier cosa por
Napoleon's offer to get the saw out was discussed at length, but finally rejected. Later, we asked Doug why he insisted on playing by the rules when nobody else in Ecuador seemed to.
I don't know what the rules are. I don't have any rules. I'm working within a structure at the moment that includes indigenous federations, campesino federations, people at community level, and it also includes the government, in this case, that has contacts with the Cancilleria. And so to involve all those people and to cooperate and collaborate between those entities is in itself a movement forward.
If we try and pull this one off in some sort of shady way in order to save a few $1,000s, we could be storing up problems for ourselves later, which are not worth a couple of $1,000s.
We decided to take Fernando up on his invitation to visit Endesa's plantations, which were about 100 miles north of Quito.
What is that tree there?
Chris and Lucinda decided to come along to see what the competition was up to. The plantation covered about 10,000 acres and had been under cultivation for 12 years.
These trees, they have a little less than 7 years old, and you can see how wide it is.
Huge.
Yeah. And the height.
What's the height of that, do you reckon?
I suppose is
15 meters?
Yes, 15 meters is okay.
Fernando showed us rows of eucalyptus trees from Syria, Sande from Indonesia, even Monterey pine from California. It was trees like these which would be supplying Endesa's new jungle sawmill in the center of the plantation. Like Chris and Doug, Endesa was taking the sawmill to the trees, only on a slightly different scale. We were pretty impressed, but Chris and Lucinda had some reservations. They pointed out that plantation-grown trees are susceptible to voracious insects and fungus. Also, it seemed hypocritical for Endesa to say they were safeguarding the natural forest when they had cut it down to create their tree farm in the first place.
Oh, so you turned a natural forest into a plantation?
Yes.
Can't buy.
Well, why? Why, when there was so much cleared colonial land, did you clear further natural forest?
No, this natural forest was logging.
Or had been logged?
After logging.
Fernando insisted that all of Endesa's plantations were created on land that had been reclaimed from colonos who had already cleared it and moved on. Furthermore, he saw plantations as the only solution to forest destruction because they would provide the colonos jobs tending plantation trees, jobs that would let them earn money so they wouldn't have to wreck the native rainforest. Fernando believed before you could save the forest, you had to solve the problem of people.
Man is the first over all. I tell you, I am an homocentric people. I believe in man.
Nosotros no son homocentric. We're not homocentric. We are, if you like, we try and look at man within a natural system. and that is an equal relationship. It is not man above everything else. Maybe there's a fundamental philosophical difference.
I agree
so
with you.
we are looking for an economic system that enables a larger amount of what we see as an important part of the world's ecosystem, which is the rainforest. We are looking for an economic method to enable a greater amount of rainforest, natural rainforest, to remain in its natural state.
And supply the needs of the people.
And supply the needs of the people, our people and your people.
Okay.
It was a stimulating argument, but what we were wondering about was that stack of logs parked next to the factory. We figured the plantation that these babies came from must have been planted by Columbus himself. Fernando admitted that they came from the native rainforest, but insisted they were just brought in to test the equipment. That's when we decided it was time to send in our request for an interview with the boss, Juan Manuel Durini. While we were gone, Doug and Marta had cut through most of the red tape. All they needed was the signature of a single minister on the permiso letter, and the saw was theirs. But when a female ambassador called to urge the minister to sign the letter, the minister tore up the letter. He didn't like being told what to do by a woman.
The woman was to call because she knows that if she called the man.
So it's still those two stupid people throwing women.
Adding to the pressure was the fact that Clive, the only person who knew how to run the saw, had a limited amount of time to stay in Ecuador, and that time was running out.
Business class.
Without Clive, there would be no demonstration, so Doug did his best to convince him to stay.
You know what I mean? If you want to get out of it, you have to go and live somewhere by yourself and not enter into the struggle of planet Earth now. You know, and I don't think you're that sort of person, you know what I mean?
No, I'm that sort of person. I'm concerned about planet Earth, but nobody gives a shit. The only thing people care about is Nissan patrols, you know, Reebok shoes, and all the rest of the trimmings that go with Western life.
Well, I'm not. I'm not, but I'm not. You can think I am, but I'm not. And I never had been.
Look at that, you know, a whole lots of blaze.
A few days later, we got a call from Fernando, who told us Endesa's president had agreed to an interview. We asked Mr. Durini what he thought about environmentalists who blame him for rainforest destruction.
They are just concerned about the environment, and they don't see what exactly is happening. See, if studies that we have done as an association here in Ecuador, only something like 35% of the wood that's being cut in the tropical rainforest get to the industries, and 65% is lost.
After we did some checking around, we found out, to our disappointment, that Senor Durini was telling the truth. It is the colonos who cut down the majority of trees. Not because they want to, but because according to the Land Reform Act of 1964, in order to take title to their land, they must first clear it of trees.
Now, what we are doing at the moment is using all part of these trees that any way are going to be cut down for transferring land to agriculture.
Not only was Senor Durini not the villain we were looking for, but he actually seemed to have a sensible plan for saving the forest.
And the only solution that I see in the future is to really start a big reforestation program.
We thanked Senior Durini for the interview, but before we left, we wanted to find out what he really thought of Doug and Chris's Track-A-Saw. So we turned off the big camera and turned on the little one.
The man saw, I don't care how small it is, it's going to be heavy. You will probably need something to pull that machine and to move it from one tree to the next, and how easy it is to install. Whereas the chainsaw, they go to the tree, boom, finished, yeah? And if the chainsaw goes bad, disposable, buy a new one.
Chainsaws. Now there was a subject we could cut into.
Even if it's less productive and more destructive, the chainsaw right now is the king.
Fernando mentioned that last year, over $4 million was spent on chainsaws in Ecuador. We figured to find our bad guys, all we had to do was follow the roar of the chainsaw. When we got back to Doug's house, Chris and Lucinda were waiting outside with some good news.
In the middle of all that meeting, phone call from the ministry saying the man signed the paper.
The permiso is there.
The permiso is there.
Hooray!
We hug the post and we leap up and down and do a dance.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I'm very pessimistic about the entire thing.
You are? No, not you, Clive.
We've been told one story and then another, time and time again.
So what do you think's going to happen? What do you got your money on?
If I go on the flight tomorrow, then the saw will come out.
Yeah.
If I don't go on the flight tomorrow, the saw will stay in the customer.
We headed out to the jungle one last time, determined to find our bad guys. We had a hunch they'd be revving their chainsaws at the end of the road.